Why the avoidant can't handle the super empath's calm detachment. There comes a moment when the person who used to chase you just stops. And suddenly, the silence that once felt peaceful to you as an avoidant feels like punishment. Because now they're not reacting, they're not begging, they're not proving their worth. They're free. And that terrifies you more than closeness ever did. Let's talk about why the avoidant can't handle the super empath's calm detachment and what that says about emotional power. The avoidant's sense of control has always been rooted in distance. Emotional distance is their shield. It's where they feel safest, where they believe they can't be hurt. For someone with avoidant tendencies, closeness often feels like a threat, not a comfort. The moment intimacy begins to deepen, a quiet alarm goes off inside them. They start to retreat, pulling away just enough to re-establish control over their emotions and over the dynamic itself. They convince themselves they're simply needing space. But in truth, it's about keeping power. The power to decide when connection happens and when it doesn't. When they pull away, they watch how you respond. If you chase, they feel reassured. If you play or try to fix things, they know they still hold emotional influence. They may even convince themselves that you care more than they do, which gives them the illusion of safety. They equate attachment with vulnerability and vulnerability with loss of control. So every time you reach out in confusion, trying to understand, they interpret it as confirmation that they're needed, that they matter. It's not malicious. It's a survival mechanism learned long before they met you. Distance becomes their comfort, reaction becomes their validation. But what happens when you stop reacting, when your energy no longer rises and falls with theirs? Suddenly, the entire system they've relied on stops working. The silence that once comforted them now feels unfamiliar, even threatening, because now they're not the one managing the emotional tone, you are. Your calm detachment shifts the balance. They can no longer predict your response or control the tempo of the connection. And for someone whose safety comes from control, that's deeply unsettling. The avoidant is used to emotional push and pull. The chaos of hot and cold dynamics to them feels like normalcy. When you withdraw with peace instead of pain, it sends a message they can't quite decode. They expect anger or accusation. They understand drama. They don't understand serenity. Your lack of reaction doesn't mean indifference. It means emotional mastery. You've stopped negotiating your worth through their attention, and that changes everything. In that calm, they start to feel what you've been feeling all along. The uncertainty, the distance, the doubt. For perhaps the first time, they're the one wondering. They replay conversations, notice your absence, and question what changed. It's not the loss of you that stings first, it's the loss of control. The dynamic no longer bends around their comfort zone. Your silence forces them to confront their own discomfort, to feel the emptiness they've been avoiding. There's an irony here. The avoidant runs from intimacy because they fear being consumed by someone else's emotions. Yet when faced with someone who no longer demands or chases, they feel an even deeper kind of exposure. Your calm doesn't attack their defenses. It dissolves them. It shows them that peace doesn't have to mean distance, and that real control doesn't come from withdrawal, but from emotional regulation. But in that moment, they're not ready to understand that. All they know is that their usual pattern isn't working. The game has changed, and for once, they're not holding the reins. Your calm detachment becomes the one thing they can't manage because it's the one thing that shows them the truth. Control built on avoidance isn't strength. It's fear wearing confidence as a disguise. When the super empath becomes calm, it doesn't mean they've stopped caring. It means they've started seeing clearly. Their calm isn't cold, it's conscious. It's the result of feeling everything so deeply for so long that they've finally reached a place where peace becomes more valuable than emotional chaos. To the avoidant, this calm is confusing because it's not reactive, not dramatic, not loud. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase. It simply exists in its own centered stillness. And in that stillness, something powerful happens. The super empath becomes a mirror. The avoidant, who's used to managing emotions by keeping distance, suddenly faces a reflection they can't escape. When an empath detaches, they do it not from bitterness, but from balance. Their energy no longer stretches outward trying to soothe, fix, or understand. They stand still, and in that stillness, the avoidant sees themselves more clearly than ever before. The calm energy of the empath reflects everything the avoidant has been running from. The discomfort, the uncertainty, the buried fear of intimacy. The empath's silence quietly says, I'm not fighting you, but I'm also not losing myself for you. And that message pierces through in a way that words never could. Mirrors are uncomfortable when you've spent your life avoiding your own reflection. The avoidant thrives when others are emotionally activated because it keeps attention away from their inner world. But when the empath stops engaging in that emotional tug of war, the spotlight shifts inward. Suddenly, the avoidant has to sit with their own thoughts, their own patterns, their own resistance. The empath's calm doesn't expose them out of cruelty, it invites self-awareness. But to someone who has built a wall around vulnerability, that invitation feels like confrontation. There's something magnetic about the empath's calm because it's rooted in authenticity. It's not manipulation, it's self-mastery. It says, I can love you, but I will not lose myself in the process. The avoidant doesn't quite know how to respond to that kind of energy. They're drawn to it because it feels safe, stable, real, everything they secretly crave. But at the same time, it triggers the very fear that keeps them distant. The paradox is that the empath's calm presence feels both soothing and threatening. It's soothing because it offers safety and threatening because it demands self-reflection. The more composed the empath becomes, the more the avoidant feels exposed. That calm becomes an emotional X-ray, revealing truths they've long suppressed. It shows the avoidant how dependent they've become on others' emotional reactions to maintain a sense of control. It highlights that they've mistaken peace for boredom and connection for danger, and because the empath no longer fuels the pattern with overgiving or over-explaining, the avoidant can't hide behind chaos anymore. In the empath's stillness, the dynamic flips. The one who used to absorb everyone else's emotions is now simply observing. The avoidant, who once believed they held the emotional upper hand, finds themselves uncertain, almost uneasy, in the face of someone who no longer needs their approval or their attention to feel whole. The calm of the empath doesn't demand validation, it radiates self-worth. It doesn't chase love, it attracts it naturally through presence and peace. And for the avoidant, who has lived their life mistaking emotional intensity for connection, that calm detachment becomes the most powerful mirror of all. A silent reflection that says, this is what real security looks like. Detachment is so often misunderstood. People think it means apathy or emotional shutdown, but in truth, calm detachment is one of the highest forms of strength. For the super empath, it's not about abandoning love. It's about reclaiming peace. After giving endlessly, after feeling everything in high definition for so long, they finally learn that loving someone doesn't mean losing themselves in the process. Detachment isn't the absence of emotion, it's the presence of self-respect. It's the quiet recognition that they can care deeply for someone and still choose not to engage in dynamics that drain their energy or compromise their boundaries. When the empath reaches that place, it's not sudden. It's a gradual awakening that comes after exhaustion, confusion, and heartbreak. They've spent so much time trying to understand the avoidant, to fix what feels broken, to bridge the distance that was never theirs to close. They've poured themselves into the connection until one day they realize that love shouldn't hurt like this. That realization isn't bitter, it's liberating. They stop trying to prove their value through effort. They stop mistaking persistence for devotion. And in that surrender, they discover an inner calm that doesn't depend on anyone else's response. To the avoidant, that shift feels jarring. They're used to a pattern where the empath reaches, explains, apologizes, and reassures. They expect emotional pursuit, but detachment interrupts that rhythm. Suddenly, the energy that used to flow toward them stops. The empath is no longer chasing, they're simply observing. Their peace feels like distance, but it's actually clarity. It's the moment they understand that no amount of emotional labor can create security with someone who fears closeness. They learn that detachment doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing to stay grounded even when someone else chooses chaos. There's immense power in this. Detachment is the refusal to be emotionally manipulated by inconsistency. It's saying, I can love you, but I won't collapse for you. The empath's calm detachment isn't about punishing the avoidant. It's about preserving their own emotional health. It's about breaking the cycle of overgiving that keeps both people stuck. For the first time, the empath's peace becomes their boundary, and that boundary silently teaches the avoidant what healthy love actually looks like. This kind of strength doesn't shout or demand recognition. It simply radiates quiet confidence. It says, I no longer need to prove I'm worthy of love. That energy is magnetic because it's rooted in truth. And the irony is that the moment the empath stops trying to earn affection, they become infinitely more attractive. Their calm presence draws attention not because it's strategic, but because it's real. People who operate from avoidance often find themselves unsettled by this energy. They can't control it, they can't predict it, and they can't define it. It's not emotional withdrawal, it's emotional maturity. In this space, the empath's love remains, but it's purified. It's no longer about attachment or outcome, it's about intention. They've learned that peace is not passive, it's powerful. And the calm they've cultivated isn't a wall to keep people out, it's a foundation strong enough to stand on, even if others walk away. When calm meets chaos, the truth begins to surface in ways words never could. The avoidant is accustomed to intensity. They equate emotional turbulence with connection because it mirrors what they've always known. Conflict, withdrawal, and reconciliation form a pattern that feels familiar, even safe, because it keeps real vulnerability at arm's length. Chaos to them isn't just a reaction, it's a distraction. As long as emotions are swirling around them, they never have to look inward. But when the super empath meets that energy with calm detachment instead of emotional reactivity, the noise disappears. The silence left behind exposes everything that's been hiding beneath the surface. The empath's calm presence is not passive, it's deeply reflective. It's a quiet mirror that doesn't distort. It reveals without accusation what's truly happening in the dynamic. When the empath stops over-explaining, stops defending, stops chasing clarity from someone who resists it, the air clears. The avoidant can no longer hide behind their usual patterns of confusion or withdrawal. They start to feel the weight of their own avoidance because the empath is no longer carrying it for them. The emotional noise they once relied on to maintain distance has vanished, leaving only truth in its place. That truth can be uncomfortable. The avoidant begins to sense that what they once interpreted as safety, emotional space, is actually loneliness. They start to see that every time they pulled away to protect themselves, they were also cutting themselves off from genuine intimacy. The empath's calm energy makes that realization impossible to ignore. There's no argument, no pleading, no drama, just quiet presence. And in that quiet, the avoidant hears echoes they've been running from for years, the ache of disconnection, the fear of being seen, the longing to be understood without being consumed. The empath's calm creates a space where accountability can finally breathe. It doesn't come from judgment, but from awareness. When chaos is replaced by composure, every emotional defense starts to crumble. The avoidant begins to see how much of their behavior was driven by fear rather than preference. They start to question why peace feels suffocating, why love feels threatening, and why calm detachment triggers a reaction stronger than anger ever did. The empath doesn't force this introspection. It happens naturally, simply because their energy no longer feeds the dysfunction. For the empath, this moment is a quiet victory of growth. They've learned that emotional chaos is not proof of passion. They no longer mistake intensity for connection or silence for rejection. Their calm becomes a boundary that separates real love from emotional dependency. The more peaceful they remain, the more clearly the avoidant sees themselves. It's as if the empath's serenity lights a mirror between them, revealing everything that noise used to conceal. The avoidant, confronted by this reflection, begins to understand that what they feared wasn't the other person's love, it was their own vulnerability. In that meeting of calm and chaos, everything becomes transparent. The empath's stillness dismantles the illusion that control and love can coexist. It shows that true strength doesn't come from retreating or dominating, it comes from presence. And once that truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. The chaos loses its power because peace has finally entered the room. Emotional maturity is one of the most magnetic forces in any relationship because it shifts the foundation from need to choice. When the super empath reaches this level of awareness, something powerful changes. They no longer engage from a place of fear, approval seeking, or overextension. They've learned through experience that love built on emotional instability is never sustainable, no matter how intoxicating it feels in the beginning. So they begin to move differently, slower, softer, more deliberate. They no longer rush to fix, to explain, or to soothe the avoidance discomfort. Instead, they allow silence to speak and they let actions reveal truth. Detachment in this light is not about withdrawal, it's about elevation. It's the moment when the empath stops playing the role of healer or savior and starts living as a whole person. Their calm no longer hides pain, it reflects wisdom. They know that true intimacy can't exist without two people taking responsibility for their own emotions. So they stop trying to manage someone else's emotional storms. They stop shrinking themselves to maintain harmony. That shift doesn't make them distant, it makes them authentic. The peace they embody becomes magnetic because it represents stability, something the avoidant has always longed for but never knew how to sustain. For the avoidant, that calm is disarming. They're drawn to it because it feels safe, yet unsettled by it because it demands honesty. The empath's emotional maturity holds up a mirror that says, this is what love looks like when it's not controlled by fear. It's steady, patient, and clear. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't demand. It simply is. The avoidant who once believed that detachment was strength now sees that the real power lies in emotional regulation. They start to feel the difference between someone who withdraws out of fear and someone who steps back out of peace. One is avoidance, the other is mastery. When the empath stops reacting and starts responding, everything changes. They no longer give energy to uncertainty. They don't chase closure, they create it within themselves. They begin to see that silence can be an act of self-love. That calm isn't the absence of passion, but the presence of trust. That kind of energy draws people in, not because it's strategic, but because it's rare. In a world addicted to emotional chaos, someone who radiates composure stands out. Their peace becomes an anchor. Their clarity becomes a light. Ironically, this is the point when the avoidant often begins to crave what they once resisted. The same calm they once misinterpreted as detachment now feels like safety. The same stillness they once found intimidating now feels like home. They sense the difference between temporary comfort and lasting connection. But by this stage, the empath's love no longer comes with pressure or persuasion. It's offered freely, not fearfully. That's what makes it powerful. The empath has learned that emotional maturity doesn't mean feeling less, it means feeling with awareness. It's knowing when to hold on and when to let go, when to speak and when silence says more. That quiet confidence, that unshakable calm becomes irresistible. Because real power in love isn't about control, it's about peace that no longer needs permission to exist. When you step back and look at it all, the story between the avoidant and the super empath isn't really about who's right or wrong, it's about evolution. It's about how two emotional worlds collide, challenge, and ultimately reveal the truth about love and self-worth. The avoidant teaches the empath about boundaries. The empath teaches the avoidant about vulnerability. And somewhere between the running and the reaching, both are given the chance to grow. But the moment the super empath chooses calm over chaos, everything changes. That calm is not disconnection, it's transformation. It's the moment they say, I can love you and still protect my peace. And in that sentence lies the entire lesson. Love is not supposed to be a battlefield for control or validation. It's meant to be a space where two whole people can meet without fear, without masks, and without power struggles. The avoidant may struggle to handle that level of emotional stillness because it breaks the old rhythm, the dance of push and pull, chase and retreat. But that's okay. Sometimes one person's healing will look like another person's discomfort. The empath's calm detachment isn't meant to punish. It's meant to reset the energy. It's a declaration that says, I've learned to stay even when everything in me wants to fix, but I've also learned to walk away when peace requires it. That kind of emotional maturity shifts the entire dynamic. So if you're the empath, the one who has loved deeply, given endlessly, and finally found the courage to stay calm when everything inside you wanted to fight, understand that you've already won. Your peace is not indifference, it's power. Your detachment is not distance, it's dignity. You don't have to chase anyone who is running from themselves. You just have to stay grounded in who you are. And if you've ever been the avoidant, know this, it's never too late to lean in, to soften, to allow closeness to feel safe again. Healing isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. It's about recognizing the walls you built protection may now be standing between you and the love you crave. The moment you face that truth, you give yourself the chance to grow past it. So let calm be your new language. Let peace be your power. Let connection come from choice, not from fear. Because in the end, the real strength isn't in who walks away first, it's in who learns how to love without losing themselves. Thank you for listening, for reflecting, and for showing up not just to understand others, but to understand yourself. Remember, emotional maturity isn't the absence of feeling, it's the mastery of it. Keep your peace close, keep your standards high, and never apologize for protecting your energy. Until next time, stay kind, stay calm, and stay powerful.